Heyo, welcome back to Things of Interest, where I take a look at various objects from my small collection that are, well, interesting. Today's topic can be considered a follow-up of sorts from one of my older videos because we are taking a look at the Galaga tiny arcade machine. Now, if you have caught up with some of my previous videos, you may know that I've made a video on a similar small-scale arcade machine but for Pac-Man instead. I'm not going to repeat most of my points from that video, so if you haven't seen it yet, I'll link to it in the card up top, but there are definitely reasons why I want to make another video for this Galaga machine. Pac-Man on a tiny arcade machine definitely looks pretty neat. The exterior is mostly faithful to the original machine, and the actual game is still playable even when shrunk down to a miniature size and played with an admittedly mediocre quote-unquote joystick. But Galaga is a totally different beast altogether. If you've never heard of it somehow, it's a shoot-'em-up released by Namco in 1981 as a sequel to Galaxian. While Pac-Man just has you moving around a maze with the joystick, in Galaga you need to use a button to fire in addition to dodging enemy attacks, which will be interesting to see play out on such a tiny device. But first, the exterior. The shape is completely identical to that of the Pac-Man machine, which still fits the original cabinet. For some other games in the tiny arcade lineup though, like Frogger, I think this design would have been less authentic. Still, like the Pac-Man machine, the original artwork is here except for those around the screen and controls, which isn't that big of a loss. If you want complete faithfulness to the exterior appearance, you're better off getting one of those quarter-sized arcade machines. Once again, it comes with 3 AAA batteries pre-installed in a compartment held in with a screw. Let's just turn it on. Oh ho, look at that! Looking at the demo gameplay, which is completely different from the original's Attract mode, it definitely isn't a straight up port, rather a version built from the ground up. I'm not the biggest Namco fan, but I do own the original version on Namco Museum for the Switch, so I can make comparisons between the two. If you've never played Galaga, it's essentially a reimagining of Space Invaders, where the enemy ships can move around into different formations and of course attack you. There are also those items from Smash Bros that capture your ship and turn it into an enemy. Then if you're a cool kid, you learn to get your ships captured intentionally and then rescue them to double your firepower. It's a pretty neat layer of strategy added to an otherwise fairly straightforward but influential shooter. But you're not here to see me just review regular Galaga, you're here for tiny Galaga, so let's see how this version holds up. The button on the left is for starting the game and the one on the right is used to fire. Now in Pac-Man, all you can really do is move in the 4 directions, but now with the need to move and shoot at the same time, these controls just don't really cut it. These small and clicky plastic buttons just aren't suitable for mashing at all. I guarantee that after a while it's going to hurt and leave an imprint on your fingers. It would have helped a lot if the other button can also be used as a turbo button, just like the Switch version that I'm playing the original game on. At first glance, the enemy patterns during gameplay are identical to the original, but there is definitely a lot less screen real estate to deal with. This makes it more challenging to avoid enemy attacks as there is less room for you to maneuver around them. Still, all the gameplay mechanics from the original remain intact here, so it really is just a specialized, smaller version of Galaga. It does run at a lower frame rate than the original, and the enemy movements are obviously less smooth. I found that shooting a row of moving enemies doesn't always work that well. Now before you ask if there's a kill screen, I can't really confirm that. I'm already bad enough at arcade games as is, let alone getting to the highest possible level on these tiny stiff controls. The farthest I've gotten on this unit so far is stage 3. Yep, I suck. I suppose it'll take a Galaga expert to see if the later parts of the game are still faithful to the original, but I can't see why that wouldn't be the case. For now though, this is still a playable, novel version of Galaga. It's definitely limited by the form factor of these tiny arcade machines, as they presumably all have the same controls and it just doesn't really work with a shooter that well. But there is indeed a fully playable rendition of Galaga in here. Maybe a tad more challenging thanks to the smaller screen and controls, but maybe that can also serve as a hook for fans of the game who are looking for a more challenging version. The minor shortcomings that I've mentioned with the Pac-Man machine are still present, such as the lack of a volume control, but besides that, it still holds up as a novelty item. Just don't play it for extended periods unless you want to get marks on your finger. I got this machine on sale for around $12 US, so I think it's worth it for that price. But of course that depends on how much it is sold for around your area and your personal preference. So if you ever come across more of these tiny arcade machines, it doesn't hurt to check them out. As always, there's more things of interest to be covered, so thanks for sticking around and I'll catch you guys later. MVBBY.